Hey friends, it's Just the Gems. I'm Brandon. I am a gigantic Xeno series fan. I have loved all of the games in the series since the very beginning. Xenogears was my first PlayStation 1 game. I bought the PlayStation because of Xenogears. I didn't buy it because of Final Fantasy VII. I was willing to play that on PC. Xenogears, I was like, need to have a PlayStation. It just looked so incredibly cool, and I do not regret it. It was a life-changing game for me. Then Xenosaga came along, and I was like, oh my gosh, we get to see kind of the story behind the game. Like, it wasn't exactly a prequel, but you know, it was kind of connected and had some very interesting connections to Xenogears. And then years went by, and eventually the series was sort of resurrected in Xenoblade. And I missed out initially on the Wii, but I did, of course, pick up the definitive edition on the Switch and played Xenoblade 2, Xenoblade 3. Love them, all the DLCs, Future Redeemed, Torn on the Golden Country. Just love them. They're just fantastic stories. And the one that, you know, traditionally has been overlooked because it was released on the worst performing Nintendo system was Xenoblade Chronicles X for the Wii U, right? Like, almost nobody played that game. And when I was doing my Xeno series playthrough, I did go back and play through Xenoblade Chronicles X on the Wii U because I wanted to have the full experience. And I really didn't think I'd like it, but it ended up being one of my favorite video games ever. It's just so good. The story is really intriguing. It seems like it's not going to be. It seems like it's going to be run of the mill, but it picks up steam. And then by the end, you're like, what is happening here? And I was just really excited to see it continue. And I was afraid it never would, because the series shifted pretty strongly back towards the Xenoblade 1 direction. And now, with the release of Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition on the Switch, we get additional story content that I'm assuming is going to fill in those blanks, answer some of those questions that were left over from the original release. So I'm super excited about that. Thank you, please. Now, I didn't get the game early. I'm not reviewing it. You know, Nintendo, hit me up if you ever want me to do that. I would love to. I don't think that's going to happen. But I did want to drop in with my initial impressions after playing many hours over this past weekend. So, man, I'll tell you, it's great to revisit this game. And you're going to have to help me out in the comments because I don't 100% know what elements are changes compared to the original and what elements are just me taking more time and being more present and just understanding what's happening in the game better. We'll get into it. Anyway, first of all, I want to talk about the things that I really like other than the game. Like I said already, Xenoblade Chronicles X is one of my favorite games, so it's kind of pointless for me to sit here and list a bunch of things that I like about Xenoblade Chronicles X. Like, it's a known entity at this point. Like, people are aware of Xenoblade X, and, you know, some people probably won't like it because of the ways in which it differs from the mainline Xenoblade series. But for me, just the exploration is just incredible. The story is incredible. The characters are not as incredible, but the way everything works together is just fantastic. So I want to talk about some of the positives that I've seen in playing the game in the definitive edition on the Switch. The first thing that really caught my attention was the fact that I understand the combat much better than I ever did in my original playthrough on the Wii U. I don't know if it's that they're explaining it better, like they're just, the tutorials are more helpful, or if I'm just paying more attention, if I'm being more cognizant of what's happening and not trying to just brute force my way through the game, or if they have genuinely made changes to the combat that are just making it easier to comprehend for me. Regardless, I am having a much, much better time with the gameplay in the definitive edition. Things are well explained. It's an incredibly complex battle system. I'm not going to lie. Like, Xenoblade in general has a very complicated battle system to the point where some games you need to sit down and watch like 90-minute long YouTube tutorials to really learn the ins and outs of them. And that can be off-putting for some people. It's honestly off-putting for me. And I've basically brute forced my way through most of the Xenoblade games. I've never fully understood the combat systems in basically any of them. But with Xenoblade X, I feel like I am the closest I've ever been to having a really good actual understanding of how the combat works. Okay, so if you're not aware, in Xenoblade and here in Xenoblade X, you are basically, when you're engaged with an enemy, you are constantly auto-attacking, and there's a cooldown between your auto attacks, so you're not just constantly firing, but there's little breaks in between. And along the bottom of your screen, you have a row of icons. These are arts that you can use, special moves basically. And some of them are long range attacks, some of them are short range, some of them are like buffs for you and your party, some of them are debuffs for the enemies. And you can use these moves as often as you like. There's just a cooldown period after you've used them to when they recharge, okay? So combat is about balancing the use of your arts to maximize the amount of damage you do and also manage your health. So one thing that Xenoblade X does differently than other JRPGs is there's a de-emphasis on healing items and direct healing spells and things like that. A lot of your healing comes from just performing the battles well. So as you play the game, as you fight battles, you will see your characters, the other characters in your party, will say certain things in combat. And yeah, that can get annoying when characters say the same things over and over and over in combat. It's a very common problem in JRPGs, but in Xenoblade X, it is a key part of the battle system. So you'll see the different things that they say will appear in text boxes, and those text boxes are color-coded. So if you see a brown text box with, Elma saying something to you, what that means is that if you use a brown art, which in this case would be like close quarters, a melee art, while that window is still up, you will get a boost and your characters will get some healing. Okay, and the same thing if they use a green, if there's a green speech bubble, you use a buff art and you will get healing and the battle will progress. So it's all about paying attention to what your other characters are doing, what they're saying, and responding as appropriate to the situation. And that keeps you in good health as the battle goes on. And you really cannot, you can get wasted by pretty low level enemies if you are not playing the game that way. Okay. There's also some timed button presses called soul voices, soul commands, soul challenges, I think, where you've got to overlap this line within this circle. And doing that will, cause you to issue a command to the characters just like they're doing to you, and you will get some healing from that as well. And that also boosts your party morale, which causes that sort of thing to happen more frequently so that you have more opportunities to heal. So it's really a game that rewards you for paying attention and for actually engaging with it, and not just sitting back and letting the fact that there's an auto attack carry you, or just randomly pressing, arts as they come up available. I know that I did not fully understand all of this the first time I played the game. Yes, I did manage to beat it, but it was a grind. It was a less pleasant experience for me because I did not learn those basics. I just was not paying attention, had no interest in engaging with them. This time around, you also have, and I think this is new, correct me if I'm wrong, if this was in the original, then I feel really dumb, but you have the ability to use arts that are in cooldown mode if you press Y. I forget what they call that, but you basically can use an art that's still in the process of cooling down. And there's a meter that, you increase over the course of the game that will allow you to do that until it runs out. That is a game changer for me. If it was in the original game, wow, I'm an idiot. But if that's new, then I think that's a brilliant addition because it allows you to continue to engage with the mechanics of the combat system, even if you have run out of all of your arts for the moment, right? So it can be a lifesaver. And from my experience so far, the first 10 hours or so I've put in, it has been a lifesaver on more than one occasion. Okay, so the combat. I think it's great. Like I said, I've on this channel, I've mentioned before, it's not my preferred style of combat, but the way Xenoblade X handles it, I do find myself enjoying it quite a bit more. On par with or even exceeding Xenoblade 3, which to this point had been the combat system in the series, the Xenoblade sub-series at least, that I enjoyed the most. So A+ on the combat. Even beyond the combat, I just feel like in general, every other system is either A, being better explained, or B, has been updated to just be better. And again, I don't know. It's been a few years since I played the original. I'm not sure which is the case. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and say that they probably did make quite a lot of, under the hood improvements to the tutorials and just the makeup of these various systems, like changing party members and managing arts and skills and whatnot. It just feels a lot smoother to me and it makes a lot more sense to me. So again, not sure if it's as much that they have enhanced the game and if it's just I'm paying attention to it, but that's further encouragement. Pay attention to the instructions as they come up, because it's actually pretty important to fully understanding the game. And it's a very complicated game. One thing that I have a question about, and I could look this up, but I think they changed the field actions. So it used to be in Xenoblade X on the Wii U, you would go around the world and you would find these things that you could interact with. And some of them were just treasures that you could find and you would get a treasure. Some of them required like different skills, like botany or agriculture. I don't know. There were like all these different things that you needed to level up in order to be able to perform these field actions. So far, I have not run into anything that I can't do. Everything just is listed as a treasure. And when I go up to it and engage with it, it doesn't suggest that it's a different level or whatever. It's just a field action. So did they change that? I mean, if they did, I think that's great, because that was super irritating. I hated that you had to go back and like grind for these seemingly pointless skills to be able to just essentially open a treasure box, kind of. Like, it's more complicated than that, but basically that's what it was. So if they did change the field actions, love it. Great. Also, I think a lot of people have said, they like the updated character models. I think they're fine. They don't blow me away. There's still some stiffness to the animation. Like, I don't think they went through and gave it as full of a, remake polish as they did with like Xenoblade Definitive Edition for the Switch, right? I think that was a much more, if not from the ground up remake, then much closer to that than this is, which is fine. I think Xenoblade X looked fine, honestly. Like, I have no issues with the way it looked on the Wii U. So the updated character models are nice, but I don't even know that they're that necessary from my perspective. The game already looks just beautiful. And it is still the most beautiful, interesting open world I think I've seen in a game. And I mean, that's saying a lot, because even this team alone has made a bunch of really incredible, engaging open worlds, like, the Tears of the Kingdom. They worked on Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, and all the other Xenoblade games. Like, so they've got a lot of competition from within, right, for the best open world. And I still think Xenoblade X is my favorite open world in a game. Some things that I'm noticing, and again, this is kind of like, I don't know if this is so much because it's different on the Switch, or if it's just, this was the way it was on the Wii U and I'm not crazy about it. And maybe I wasn't crazy about it back then, but rose-colored glasses and all that, like, I'm not remembering the negatives as much. But I wanted to bring them up just to have a conversation about them, because I would like to know, honestly, if it is the case that these things were always present and I'm just not remembering, or if maybe the translation didn't happen as well. I don't know. But the controls feel a little, I don't know, like delayed to me. I'll notice, like, if I move the camera, sometimes it feels like there's just the tiniest, barely perceptible delay in like the camera moving around, or like jumping. I feel like if you hit the right trigger to jump, I feel like there's a full beat from when you hit it to when your character actually jumps. And that's odd to me. I don't know if I don't remember that being the case. But again, like I said, I don't know if I just have the rose-colored glasses on because I love the game so much, and maybe I did feel similarly when I was playing it. I don't know. I will say too that, and I think this is more a case of the game just being a bit older, right? It's like 2 console generations old at this point, essentially. There are some kind of awkward, weird pauses within and like surrounding the cutscenes. And I'm not talking about like loading screens. I'm talking about the way the cutscenes are paced and scripted. It feels a little bit janky sometimes, like there's delays or pauses where there shouldn't be. It doesn't really make sense. Some of that, of course, comes down to having a silent protagonist, which, this is the only Xeno game that has decided to do that, and I don't care for that at all. I think they're really intentionally framing this as a Moby Dick type story. Like, obviously the ship that you crash land on is called the White Whale, right? Like, they're going for Melville here, and so they want your character to be an Ishmael, right? They want your character to be the focal point, you yourself to be the focal point to tell like Elma's story and Lynn's story and all these other characters. Like, you are not the protagonist. You are just kind of the narrator or the camera. You're basically the camera for this story. But I would still rather have a voiced protagonist. I feel like you can do that with a voiced protagonist. I would argue Final Fantasy X is a Melville, Moby Dick style story with Tidus as the focal character and Yuna as the protagonist. So it can be done, and I would have preferred it. But anyway, all that aside, there are still some other kind of weird, awkward pauses in the cutscenes. I also don't love that so many of the cutscenes are just like static camera with the characters talking, and you can move the camera around, but like, I don't know. It feels very not super prime. Like, it's just not great. I would love some more scripted cutscenes that take into account things like dramatic camera angles and pacing and things like that, rather than just characters talking and me absentmindedly moving the camera around in a circle. Another criticism, and this is a criticism of the game in general, like this was the case I know this was the case on the Wii U version. It does take a long time to get going. Like, the game sort of railroads you through the first 3 chapters. Like, these are the things you need to do in order for the game to really open up and kind of let you do everything. Like, the online play opens up after that, and you have a lot more freedom to explore and take quests and do things. But those first 3 chapters, I mean, they do take several hours, right? Probably 4 to 5, maybe 6 hours to get through them before you actually have the game open up. So that's just honestly just a case of the design of the game. At the same time, I can criticize it, but I also don't know how you would introduce a game this complicated with all these moving parts and the world of this size with all these things to do in it without taking that time up front to set it up. I don't know of a way that would make sense to do it otherwise. So maybe this is the best that could be done with it, but it is still worth pointing out and encouraging you, if you're new to the game, if you've never played the Wii U version and you're picking up the definitive edition, yes, it does take a little while to get going. Fully acknowledge that. But once you push through those first half a dozen hours, it opens up and you have so much freedom, and you will find yourself so distracted by all the crazy cool things that you can do, side quests and, exploration. It's fun to just run around and explore. Like, it's great. And I said already that the game is beautiful, and that's true. I will say that I did forget maybe how bad the pop-in is. Oh my gosh. It is like the worst pop-in I think in a game I've seen in generations. It's like, and I'm not talking about like the scenery does a pretty good job of not popping in. It's like objects. So you'll be running into town. You'll be running into New LA, and you'll be 10 feet from a giant truck or something, and it will just phase into existence. And then right behind it, a giant skull will phase into existence. You're a dozen feet away from the thing. That's some bad pop in. Like, I almost don't mind the people popping in as much. I can kind of get that. But the bigger objects in the environment, the way they pop in, especially in New LA, it's like, I don't know if the Switch 2 is going to bring more than that rumored 60 frames per second hidden mode that apparently is in the code. If you're not aware of that, apparently they found within the code of Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition a 60 frames per second mode that is locked. You can't access it on the Switch. So the assumption is that it is there for the Switch 2. Makes sense. Hopefully, in addition to better frame rate, we will get some boost to the graphical capabilities of the game, because that's the only thing that holds me back from saying that this is like a visual masterpiece. Is the pop-in is very bad. Also, and I don't know, maybe I made this up. Maybe I just assumed, but I thought that I had read that they were adding collision to the cars. Okay, so if you're not familiar, in the original game, you can run around the streets of New Los Angeles, and there are people driving around in cars, and you can run out into the road, and the car will just phase right through you. And it felt so subpar. It just made the game feel cheap, which it's not. I mean, it's a big, massive, beautiful game. And it felt like a weird oversight that they didn't program these cars to behave realistically. Like, I'm not saying they need to hit you and cause damage, but just stop, and without running into you. And if you run into them, like they are physical objects. I thought that I had read that they were adding collision and better programming, I guess, to the cars in New LA. No, still phasing through them. Maybe I made that up. Can you let me know in the comments if you saw that too? Because I feel like I remember seeing that. I remember being like, oh, good. That was a weird thing about the original that I think was just a strange oversight and should be easy enough to fix. But no, I'm phasing right through the cars just like always. So yeah, I have some criticisms, but at the end of the day, it's still one of the best open world JRPGs out there. It's a fantastic game overall. I think the changes that they've made to the gameplay, or even just to how they explain the gameplay, make an enormous difference. It is so much easier and better to play now than it was in the original. I'm having a great time with it. Do have some criticisms. Some of those apply equally to the remaster as to the original, but you know, for the sake of just giving you an idea if you're on the fence about whether to play the game, I want to cover everything. I also did play a little bit in handheld on my Switch OLED. It further emphasized for me why I don't like playing handheld, especially on the Switch. And no offense intended to anybody who likes handheld mode. I do not enjoy it. I find especially the Switch, the Joy-Cons, to just feel really cheap. I don't like that springy sound. Can you hear that? Everything just, I don't know, it just feels suboptimal to me. It's not super comfortable to hold. I do have some grips or some different Joy-Cons that have a little bit of a bigger grip on them, which are a bit better, but it's still, I don't know, it's not my preferred way of playing. And that's not to say anything about the quality of the game in handheld. It's fine. It looks and plays basically the same as it does on the TV. I'm sure there's a graphical downgrade. I mean, obviously it's going to a lower resolution screen, but it's not a problem. Like, it plays fine. But I did want to try out the handheld experience and make sure that there was nothing outwardly janky about it or weird before I did this video. It's fine. It's totally fine. And if you primarily play handheld, or if you don't mind playing handheld, I think you will have a good time playing handheld here. It emphasized for me the reasons that I don't play handheld in general. It's nothing specific to this game. Anyway, those are my initial thoughts. Like I said, after 10 or so hours in the game over the weekend, I am just super happy that we have it, that it actually happened. I had basically given up hope when they announced it. If you had asked me just before they announced it, are they ever going to do Xenoblade X Definitive? I would have said probably not. At this point, they're just like shoving it into the bin and moving on with the series, and okay. But man, I'm glad there's people at Monolith that still apparently love and care about this game and want to, you know, keep the story going, or tell, like, at least wrap up the cliffhangers. You know, like if they don't ever go down this, if this is like an abandoned evolutionary path of the series, if it's an evolutionary dead end for Xenoblade and we're going fully on the other path with all of its other, you know, connections and whatnot, that's okay. I'm fine with that. I would have been very bummed out if we didn't get any resolution on all the cool things that they set up in Xenoblade X. And it sounds like we might. I'm sure some of you have already plowed through the main story and have seen the extra story content. Please don't spoil it. I don't want to read a comment and have it spoiled. I will get there hopefully before too long. But I'm just so glad that we have it. Let me know down in the comments what you think about Xenoblade X Definitive Edition. If you have played it, if you haven't played it, let me know if you're considering it. I strongly encourage you to, if you like JRPGs, if you like the Xeno series, you know, if you like open world games, like there's a lot of reasons that you might want to check this out. I strongly recommend that you check it out. It is very cool. I love it so much. Anyway, that's going to do it for me this time. Thank you so much for watching. You are a real one for sticking with me till the end. If you wouldn't mind liking the video just to help me out, and subscribing, which also helps me out immensely. I know you don't need to subscribe really anymore because the way YouTube works, it's just going to put videos on your homepage. So I know subscribing doesn't mean as much for you as a viewer, but it actually does help me out a lot as a content creator person. So if you wouldn't mind subscribing, I would really appreciate it. Again, leave me your thoughts in the comments below. And until next time, bye.